This story is titled, "My wife thought she could have an affair while living off my wealth, but when I filed for divorce, she and her lawyer plotted to take my company, property, and demand alimony, not knowing I already had my revenge plan ready." Hey Reddit, I'm 38 years old, and until recently, I was married to Kate, who's 30. We were together for 7 years before our marriage ended in what I can only describe as the most fucked up way possible. I still find myself processing everything that happened, and I thought writing it all down might help me make sense of it. Maybe my story will help someone else avoid the same mistakes I made. Our story begins with my construction company. I built it from absolutely nothing. When I started, it was just me, a beat-up old truck that had seen better days and barely enough tools to fill half of a garage. The first few years were absolute hell. I was working 80-hour weeks consistently, sometimes sleeping in my truck just to save on gas money when jobs ran late. I'd drive between construction sites eating nothing but gas station sandwiches, bidding on jobs that barely covered the cost of materials. I'm not trying to brag here, but I genuinely sacrificed everything to make this business work. I even missed my best friend's wedding because I had to finish a commercial project that was keeping us financially afloat that year. There was even a time when I worked through pneumonia because I literally couldn't afford to lose the client. Every penny I made went right back into purchasing better equipment and eventually hiring good, reliable people. Meanwhile, Kate never worked a single day during our entire marriage. Not one. That was our arrangement from the beginning. You focus on your dreams, babe. I'll take care of the house. It seemed fair at the time, but looking back, I realize how one-sided it really was. Her idea of taking care of the house meant hiring a cleaning service with my money, ordering takeout 5 nights a week, and throwing dinner parties that she claimed were for networking, but somehow only ever included her friends. The most effort she ever put into our home was redecorating the living room 3 times in 7 years because she got bored with the aesthetic. Yet I wanted her to live her best life, so I made sure she had everything she could possibly want. A brand new BMW, a personal trainer, and shopping sprees that would make your credit card weep. All while I was wearing the same 5 t-shirts and driving a car with over 100,000 miles on it because I'm practical that way. I never stressed about money around her, never complained. I thought that's what you do when you love someone. You make sacrifices to ensure their happiness. Our house was nice, not mansion level, but definitely upper-class suburban with good schools and all the amenities that come with that kind of neighborhood. We had a dog, but no kids. From the outside looking in, we were that couple people probably envied. Successful, seemingly happy, with all the trappings of what society considers a good life. Kate was the type of woman who always turned heads. She was charismatic as fuck and could walk into any room and have everyone eating from her hand within 5 minutes. I wasn't jealous, though. I trusted her completely, which makes what happened next all the more devastating. I worked late most nights because the company was growing fast. Managing multiple construction sites, dealing with clients, handling contractors, and fighting with city permit offices is no joke. It takes time, patience, and a lot of energy. One night, I was at the office around 10 p.m., finishing up some project bids, when my phone buzzed. It was a text from Ryan, a buddy who runs a restaurant downtown. "Hey man, is Kate out of town? 'Cause I swear I just saw her at the Lotus with some dude." The Lotus is this fancy restaurant where you drop serious cash on dinner, not the kind of place you casually grab a bite. My stomach immediately dropped. Kate had told me she was staying home that night because she wasn't feeling well. I texted Ryan back. "You sure it was her? She was literally 2 tables away from me," he replied. "They weren't acting like casual friends, if you know what I mean." I tried to tell myself it was nothing. Maybe it was just a cousin or an old friend who was in town. The next morning, I casually asked Kate what she did the night before. She looked me straight in the face and said, "Oh, nothing. Just watched some Netflix and went to bed early," still feeling kind of crappy. That's when I knew something was definitely up. Look, I'm not one of those guys who goes through his wife's phone or tracks her location. I've always thought that kind of behavior was unnecessary and toxic to a relationship. But now I had a legitimate reason to be suspicious. That night, after she fell asleep, I checked our shared bank account. At first, everything seemed normal until I spotted a $2,800 charge at the Lotus from 2 days ago. My heart started racing. That's like 3 months of car payments gone in one night. Kate didn't have her own credit card. We shared one account for everything. So where did this charge come from? I dug deeper the next day. I grabbed the mail before Kate could see it and found a credit card bill in her name from some bank I'd never heard of. The balance? Over $15,000 spent in just 6 months. $15,000. That's a used car or a decent home theater setup, just gone. She had opened a secret credit card and was spending like crazy, and she wasn't just treating herself. Looking at the charges, I could see they were for hotels, restaurants, and expensive gifts. She was spending it on someone else, probably buying this guy presents with my hard-earned cash. So I went even deeper and checked her phone records next. Not my proudest moment, but when your spouse is lying to your face, the gloves come off. There was this one number that kept showing up, always late at night or at random times during the day. The calls were always deleted from her call history. Amateur move, Kate, but they were still there on the phone bill. I called the number when I knew she wouldn't be around. It went straight to voicemail. "Hey, you've reached David. Leave a message." David? Who the fuck was David? I almost left a message saying, "Hey David, this is the guy whose wife you're banging," but decided to play it smart instead. A quick social media search later, I found him. David Thompson, corporate attorney at one of the big firms downtown. Good-looking guy, I'll give her that. Their connection wasn't obvious on social media. They weren't even friends on Facebook. But once I knew what to look for, I found a few comment exchanges that were a little too friendly for comfort. I could have confronted her right then, but I wanted undeniable proof. Something she couldn't possibly talk her way out of. I know my way around basic security stuff, so I installed a home security system with cameras in the common areas of our house. The living room, kitchen, and front entrance. All perfectly legal since it was my house, too. I didn't put anything in the bedroom or bathrooms because I'm not a total creep. I didn't tell Kate about the new security upgrade. I just installed it while she was at her yoga class and mentioned offhandedly that we got a good deal on a security package through my company. That night, I also backed up Kate's phone while she was in the shower. Again, not proud of this, but I needed to know what I was dealing with. What I found wasn't just cheating. It was straight-up calculated betrayal. It made me realize I never really knew the woman I married at all. So there I was, with security cameras installed, basically playing detective in my own home and going full 007 mode. It wasn't exactly how I had planned to spend my weekends, but it was way cheaper than handing over half of my construction business, my house, and my money to a cheating, scheming wife. It didn't take long before the cameras caught everything. Within the first week, Kate brought David to our house while I was working late. The absolute audacity of this woman. She brought her side piece into the home I paid for, sat him on the couch I bought, and poured him drinks from the bar I stocked. But here's where it gets really messed up. They weren't just fooling around. They were actively planning how to take me down. The cameras picked up their entire conversation in crystal clear audio. "Once we file the papers, we need to ask for at least half the business," Kate was telling him. "John's construction is worth a fortune now." David, who I now realized was a divorce attorney, not just some random corporate lawyer, was coaching her on exactly what to say and do. Just keep track of every time he doesn't come home for dinner or misses something because of work. We're building a case that he was emotionally absent. He continued with his advice. "And make sure you're the one managing all the social events and house stuff. We need to show you contributed to his success." They were literally planning their strategy to take me for everything I had. Kate wasn't just cheating. She was meticulously plotting how to financially destroy me with her lawyer boyfriend. It was like watching a bad movie, except it was my actual life. I kept watching the footage, gathering evidence for a few more days. She'd tell me she was going to yoga or meeting girlfriends. Then I'd watch the security footage of her, all dressed up, leaving for her dates. Sometimes she'd come home and sleep in our bed like nothing happened. The cold calculation of it made me sick to my stomach. At this point, I decided I needed to step up my investigation. I'd sit in my car looking all innocent, slouched down with a baseball cap and sunglasses like the world's most obvious spy. Outside restaurants where I knew they'd be. Ridiculous? Absolutely. Effective? You bet your ass it was. Within another week, I had everything I needed. Photos I took myself of Kate and David sneaking into hotels together. Shout out to the zoom lens I panic bought on Amazon. Videos of them having dinner, holding hands like they were a legitimate couple. Screenshots from their public social media where this David guy was flexing about buying her gifts, like a $5,000 bracelet and designer bags. The most infuriating part? It looked like this had been going on for almost a year. A whole year! While I was working my ass off, expanding my business into 2 new counties, my wife was busy test driving her replacement husband. But wait, it gets better. One night, I remote accessed the security camera while at a job site and saw Kate going through my office. She was taking photos of my business documents, contracts, client lists, everything. She even found where I kept my passwords and took pictures of those too. When I confronted her about it later, casually asking, "Hey, were you looking for something in my office?" She gave me some bullshit about looking for insurance papers. I just nodded and played the fool, but I knew I needed to protect myself and fast. So I called Tom, my buddy who happens to be one of the best divorce attorneys in town. Not a dirtbag like David, but the kind of lawyer who makes other lawyers nervous in the courtroom. I laid everything out for him. The cheating, the plotting, all the evidence I'd gathered. "Well, looks like Kate messed with the wrong guy," Tom said after seeing some of the video clips. "But before we go nuclear, tell me, do you guys have a prenup?" I called my dad after the first meeting with Tom, once I knew exactly what Kate was planning. My old man is not the "I told you so" type, but man, he earned the right to say it this time. So I said, after explaining everything, "Looks like that prenup you made me get is going to save my ass." There was this long pause on the phone. I could practically hear him trying not to say what he was thinking. "Dad, just say it. You were right." He chuckled, but it wasn't a happy sound. "Son, I've never wanted to be wrong about something so badly in my life." That hit me hard. He wasn't celebrating being right. He was sad that his kid was going through this. Then he switched to full-on dad mode, telling me how he'd gone through something similar with his business partner years ago, though not with Mom. They're still disgustingly in love after 45 years. "The people who try to take what you've built instead of building their own, they're always out there," he said. "You just never expect it to be someone you sleep next to every night." So that's when it hit me. We did have a prenup. Before we got married, my dad, who'd been through an ugly divorce himself, insisted I get Kate to sign one. At the time, my business was just getting off the ground, so she signed it without much pushback. The agreement was clear. What I brought into the marriage and what I built through my business remained mine in case of divorce. When I first brought up the prenup, Kate acted like it was no big deal. We were sitting at this little cafe downtown, and I was nervous as hell about bringing it up. She just shrugged and said, "Sure, whatever. It's just a piece of paper, right?" Then she immediately started showing me pictures of wedding venues. At the time, my business was just me and 2 other guys with a used truck and some tools. I think she signed it thinking it was meaningless, just humoring my dad's paranoia. The look on her face when she was going through the paperwork, like she was doing me some huge favor, priceless in hindsight. I'd almost forgotten about it because I never thought I'd need it. Kate had apparently forgotten about it too, or more likely, David had convinced her they could get it thrown out. Tom reviewed the prenup and confirmed it was solid. "This is good, but we need to be careful," he warned. "If she can prove you were emotionally abusive or abandoned the marriage, a judge might invalidate it." That's when we formulated a plan. I'd keep playing dumb. I wouldn't confront Kate yet. I'd let her think her plan was working while Tom and I prepared our counterattack. So for the next few weeks, I was the model husband on the surface. I came home with flowers randomly and suggested date nights, which she often declined because she was tired or not feeling well. I made sure I had witnesses to my attempts to make our marriage work. Meanwhile, I moved my important business documents to a secure location, changed all my passwords, and opened a separate bank account she didn't know about. I started moving some assets there, all totally legal moves that my lawyer said were fine as long as I disclosed everything during divorce proceedings. I also started documenting every time she lied about her whereabouts, every time she claimed to be at yoga or with friends when she was actually with David, every time she withdrew large amounts of cash from our joint account. The whole time, Kate had no idea I was onto her. She thought I was just a clueless husband, working too much to notice her affair. She thought I was an easy target. Well, she thought wrong. Then one day, after about a month of gathering evidence and securing my assets, the cherry on top happened. She left her email open on our computer. There it was, an email to David with the subject line, "Divorce Strategy." I took screenshots of everything before she noticed. The email laid out their entire plan. She was going to wait until my company finished a major project that would bring in a huge payment. Then she would file for divorce and demand half of everything: my business, my properties, my investments. She even mentioned that they were planning to move to another state once they got their share of my money. That was the final straw. I had everything I needed now. It was time to meet with Tom and finalize our counter strategy. Kate thought she was so clever, but she had no idea what was coming her way. Before I get into what happened next, some of you might ask how Kate could forget about the prenup. That's actually the most interesting part of this whole mess. She didn't exactly forget. She just thought it didn't matter. After going through her emails more thoroughly, I found exchanges between her and David where they discussed it. David had been pumping her up with legal BS like, prenups get thrown out all the time, and we'll argue you signed under duress. That was their actual plan. They were going to claim Kate didn't understand what she was signing, that she was pressured into it, that it was unfair and should be invalidated. Kate believed it 100%. She had so much faith in David's legal expertise that she didn't even bother to check the prenup herself. She thought she was one step ahead of me, but had no idea she was about to get absolutely schooled. So anyway, back to the story. I spent about 6 weeks gathering evidence and preparing with Tom. We had video footage, text messages, emails, bank statements, credit card bills, a mountain of evidence showing the affair and the conspiracy to defraud me in the divorce. Then, it finally happened. One evening I came home from work, and Kate was waiting with this weird smirk on her face. "We need to talk," she said, sliding an envelope across the kitchen counter. Inside were divorce papers. I opened them, pretending to be shocked, scanning the documents while she watched for my reaction. The demands were exactly what I'd expected. Half my business, alimony for life, our house, even my truck. It was a complete financial massacre on paper. "I'm not happy anymore," she said, like she'd rehearsed it. "I think we both know this isn't working." I nodded slowly, playing my part perfectly. "Can I ask why? Is there someone else?" "No," she lied straight to my face. "I just feel like we've grown apart. You're always working, and I need more from a relationship." I wanted so badly to throw all the evidence in her face right then, but I stuck to the plan. I just nodded again, told her I needed time to process, and went to call my parents for support. Actually, I called Tom to let him know it was game on. The next few weeks were surreal. We still lived in the same house but barely spoke. Kate started staying out late most nights, not even bothering to lie about where she was anymore. I'd catch her smiling at her phone, probably texting David about how their plan was working perfectly. Me, meanwhile, I was actually working more than ever, closing a huge commercial project that I knew she was waiting to cash in on. She even made a comment one night. "It's good you're focused on work right now. Finish what you need to finish." The subtext was clear. Finish this project so I can take half the money. Tom and I filed our response to her divorce petition, seemingly agreeing to most terms, but asking for time to value the business properly. This bought us the time we needed to complete our strategy. We were basically letting her think she'd won while setting up the perfect trap. The court date was set for about 3 months after she filed. During that time, I strategically moved money between accounts, always documenting everything legally. I closed out the big project and got paid, but immediately reinvested most of it into the business through completely legitimate expenses. Kate noticed the business account wasn't as flush as she expected and actually confronted me about it. "Where's the money from the West Side project?" she asked one night. "Had to buy new equipment," I said casually. "Business expenses." Her face twitched with anger, but she couldn't really say anything without revealing she'd been monitoring the accounts with divorce in mind. As the court date approached, Kate got increasingly confident. She started moving some of her stuff out, shopping for a new place, even talking about her half of things in the house. She was so sure she'd be rich in a few weeks that she was already spending money she didn't have yet. The night before court, I could barely sleep. Not because I was nervous, but because I was so ready for this to be over. I wanted to see her face when everything fell apart. The morning of court, Kate spent 2 hours getting ready. Hair, makeup, outfit. She was dressed to impress in clothes I had paid for. Poor little thing had no idea she was dressing up for her last happy day. We drove separately. When I arrived at the courthouse, I saw her standing outside with David, all huddled together like a little team. He quickly walked away when he saw me coming. The coward couldn't even face me. Inside the courtroom, Kate sat on one side with him, looking smug as hell. I sat on the other with Tom, calm and ready. Kate kept glancing over at me with this little smile, probably thinking I was about to lose everything. The judge, an older woman with silver hair and a no-nonsense expression, called the court to order. David went first, standing up with this dramatic flair like he was in a TV show. "Your Honor, my client has been left financially stranded due to Mr. John's selfish actions," he began. "She dedicated years of her life to supporting this business, only to be cast aside when it became successful. I bit my tongue so hard I probably drew blood. Kate hadn't supported anything. She'd never even visited a job site, didn't know the names of a single one of my employees. But in court, he was painting her as this dedicated business partner who sacrificed everything for my success. How hilarious. Kate nodded along, looking at the judge expectantly. The judge listened, occasionally making notes. Then David got to the numbers. As compensation for her contributions to the marriage, my client is requesting half of John's construction, valued at approximately $4.2 million, he stated. Additionally, the marital home, valued at $850,000, monthly alimony of $12,000, and various other assets, including investment accounts. Kate nodded along, looking at the judge expectantly. The total package would have set me back enormously, would have effectively bankrupted me and destroyed everything I'd spent my life building. David finished with a flourish, like he just proved gravity or something. Your Honor, my client simply wants what's fair after 7 years of partnership. The judge turned to Tom. Counsel for the respondent, your statement. The bomb was about to drop, and Kate had no idea what was coming. The courtroom was dead silent as Tom stood up. Kate was still smirking, mentally spending my money already. David stood beside her, looking like a shark in an expensive suit. Tom started flipping casually through his file. Then, in the most calm, professional voice, he addressed the judge about some information that was left out of David's presentation. The judge nodded for him to proceed. That's when Tom pulled out our prenuptial agreement. He placed it in front of the judge, who started reviewing it. Kate's face went from smug to confused in about 2 seconds. I could see David whispering frantically to her, but Tom wasn't done. He mentioned that we had evidence, not only of infidelity, but of conspiracy to defraud. The judge looked interested, and Kate looked like she had soiled herself. That's when Tom pulled out the USB drive with all our evidence. The judge allowed the evidence to be presented. As the court clerk set up the video monitor, Kate's face went from confused to panicked. She kept shaking her head and tried to object, saying it was private. The judge shut her down immediately. Then the video started playing. First, it showed Kate and David in our living room, discussing how to get half my business. Then Kate taking photos of my confidential business documents. Then more clips of them plotting how to invalidate the prenup. The courtroom was so quiet you could hear a pin drop. With each new clip, Kate sank lower in her chair. David's face went from confident to horrified. The judge's expression went from neutral to disgusted, which is a great sign when you're in court. By the time the evidence presentation was done, Kate was practically hyperventilating, and David looked like he was about to throw up. The judge asked David if he had any response to this evidence. This is where it got really good. David closed his briefcase and told the court his client would be withdrawing her financial claims. Just like that. Kate turned to him in horror, but he wouldn't even look at her. And oh dear, nothing sucks more than your boyfriend bailing on you in the courtroom. May God help you recover, Kate. She tried to speak, saying they could still invalidate the prenup, but David cut her off. With the evidence presented, he knew they didn't stand a chance. The judge had seen enough and was clearly not sympathetic to Kate's case. The judge's ruling was swift and brutal. All financial claims dismissed. Prenuptial agreement upheld. Divorce granted on grounds of adultery. Kate would walk away with only what the prenup specified. Basically, her personal belongings and a small settlement that wouldn't even cover a year's worth of her shopping habits. When the gavel came down, Kate sat there stunned, like she couldn't process what had just happened. All those months of planning, scheming, and cheating, and in less than an hour, it was all over. She didn't get my business, my house, or the alimony she was counting on. Nothing. As Thanos would say, all that for a drop of blood. Except in Kate's case, she didn't even get that. I walked out of that courtroom like a boss. Kate tried to catch up with me in the hallway, tears streaking her makeup, wanting to explain everything. I just kept walking. There was nothing left to say. The aftermath was pretty straightforward. Kate had 2 weeks to move her stuff out of the house. She tried calling me multiple times, switching between crying, apologizing, and threatening me. I blocked her number after the first day. When she came to get her things, I made sure to have a couple friends there as witnesses. She looked terrible, like she hadn't slept in days. Part of me almost felt sorry for her, but then I remembered all the plotting to take everything from me, and any sympathy evaporated. I spent years of my life with that woman. I gave her everything, made sure to keep her comfortable, gave her the love, the care, the gifts, everything a good husband would do. But the moment she decided to disrespect me, disrespect my hard work, she was dead to me. She took her clothes, jewelry, and personal items. She left with about 5 suitcases and a couple boxes. a far cry from the millions she thought she'd be getting. The funniest part? She had already put a deposit down on a luxury condo, assuming she'd have plenty of money after the divorce. She lost that deposit, of course. She also had racked up massive credit card debt shopping for her new life, all of which was legally her responsibility. As for David, turns out his law firm wasn't too happy when they found out he had been helping a client plan to defraud her spouse. Well, yeah, banging the client too. Tom made sure to send the evidence to the State Bar Association, and last I checked, David was facing an ethics investigation. Couldn't have happened to a nicer guy. The whole experience changed me. I'm not going to lie. I'm more cautious now, more guarded with who I trust. But my business is doing better than ever. After the divorce was finalized, I threw my whole focus into work, secured some major new contracts, and expanded into commercial development. I sold our house. Couldn't stand to live there anymore with all those memories. I bought a smaller place closer to my main office. It's not as fancy, but it's mine. Some friends tried to set me up on dates a few months later. I went on a couple, but I wasn't into it. Trust isn't something I give easily anymore. Maybe someday, but for now, I'm good with focusing on myself and my business. Actually, I'm pretty damn good. Oh, and I got a dog. Named him Pickle. He wasn't a planned addition to my life. 2 months after the divorce was finalized, I was at a job site checking on a foundation pour when this mangy little mutt wandered onto the property. He was this weird greenish-brown color from rolling in God knows what, skinny as hell. One of my crew was about to shoo him away when I said I'd handle it. I gave him some of my lunch, and this little dude just sat there looking at me like I'd handed him the keys to the kingdom. No collar, no chip. When I took him to the vet later, he was covered in these weird stains that looked like pickle juice. Hence the name. Turned out to be some kind of algae from the creek behind the construction site. The stains eventually wore off, but the name stuck. The vet guessed Pickle was about 2 years old, some mix of terrier and possibly chihuahua, and who knows what else. I hadn't planned on keeping him. I told myself I was just cleaning him up so he'd have a better chance at the shelter. But that first night, he crawled up on the couch next to me, gave this dramatic sigh like he'd had the hardest day ever, and fell asleep on my leg. That was pretty much it for me. Pickle sleeps in my bed now. Kate would have lost her mind about that. She was always going on about dog boundaries. He comes to work with me most days, riding shotgun in the truck with his head out the window like he owns the road. The clients love him, especially since he's got this weird talent for finding lost tools on job sites. Seriously, the little dude has saved us hours of searching for dropped screws and misplaced measuring tapes. The best part about Pickle, though? He's got zero interest in my bank account. After years of trying to keep up with Kate, there's something refreshing about a relationship where success is measured in belly rubs and tennis balls. Kate tried to reach out 3 months after everything, sending a long email about how she'd changed and realized what she lost. I didn't respond. Some things can't be fixed, and some bridges stay burned for good reason. It's been about 6 months now since the divorce was finalized. I still hear about Kate occasionally through mutual friends. She moved back in with her parents for a while, then got some job at a boutique. A far cry from the wealthy divorce lifestyle she thought she'd be living. As for me, life goes on. I'm thinking about taking a vacation for the first time in years, somewhere with beaches and no cell service. It's been a year and a half since the divorce now. Time for a proper update on where things stand. First off, my business has actually grown like crazy since all this went down. It's like once I didn't have Kate draining my bank accounts and mental energy, I could really focus on what matters. We've expanded into 3 new counties and even opened a second office. I've got almost 40 employees now, and we're booked solid with projects for the next year and a half. The revenge part of this story isn't over, though. Remember how I mentioned that my lawyer Tom sent evidence to the State Bar Association about David's ethics? Well, turns out helping your girlfriend plan to defraud her husband while sleeping with her doesn't look good to the bar. After a lengthy investigation, David got his license suspended for 18 months. No idea how he's paying his bills now, but that's not my problem. As for Kate, I've mostly heard things through the grapevine. After moving back with her parents, she apparently tried to reinvent herself as some kind of social media influencer. She started an Instagram account trying to promote boutiques and local businesses. Last I checked, she had maybe 2,000 followers and was desperately trying to get free stuff in exchange for exposure. Pretty sad for someone who used to drop thousands on shopping sprees without thinking. One of the most satisfying developments came through a mutual friend who told me Kate and David had tried to rekindle things after all the legal dust settled. They moved in together in some crappy apartment, but it only lasted about 3 months before they had a massive blowout. Turns out when there's no money, their perfect relationship wasn't so perfect. David apparently cheated on her. Shocking, I know. With some paralegal from his old firm. Poetry in motion. Last month, I finally took that beach vacation I mentioned in my last post. I went to Hawaii for 2 weeks, left my laptop at home, and only checked my work email twice. The business didn't collapse, the world didn't end, and I remembered what it's like to actually relax. Life isn't perfect now, but it's good. I work hard, I'm surrounded by people I trust, and I'm building something meaningful, both in my business and my personal life. And at the end of the day, that's worth more than any amount of money Kate tried to take from me. Edit. Thanks for all the supportive comments. To those asking about Pickle, yes, he's still with me and thriving. He even got to enjoy the Hawaiian beach with me, stayed at a pet-friendly resort. And no, I'm not ready to date seriously yet, but I'm getting there. Some wounds just take time to heal completely.